I've ever listened to, and one year we drove all the way down to North Carolina just for her homecoming to hear her. She tells cultural stories about the mountains of North Carolina, and she sings the balladeers. She's a balladeer. So storytelling can take on a lot of different aspects. It can be used in teaching, can be used for entertainment, can be used for infinite amount of things that need to be done can be in storytelling. When you look at a mural and you see this big picture, do you see a story? Yeah, most of the time you'll see a story. So I want to tell a story now. This story is very special to me. This is the first time I have told it because the event just happened last week. Wilbur Powers owned a country store down on the banks of the Licking River in Magoffin County. At that store, you could buy anything. You could buy shoes for the horses, flour for the bacon, while the kids that went to the one-room school across the way, they could buy lunch there with 15 cents. And that's where my grandfather bought his long-barreled .38 Special that he wore in a shoulder holster under his coat. And that's where he bought his Boker knife. Now, Daddy tells me he can't remember when Pa bought that knife, but he remembers when he bought his gun. So he figures he was a little tiny fella when Pa Huff bought that knife. And you know, Pa Huff carried it everywhere he went. And if he wasn't busy, he'd pull his knife out and he'd whittle. Oh, he never made any beautiful artwork or anything like that. He just whittled little whirlicues. And Granny always saved them and put them in her dresser drawers because he always carried that cedar stick with him to whittle on. Pa Huff carried that knife all of his life. One year, he was plowing and disking the bottom where we were going to set out tobacco, and he lost his knife. He knew he had it when he went in there because he used it to cut a hole in Old Toad's reins. Old Toad was the mule. And he looked and he looked and he looked and he just couldn't find his knife. Even when we would go into the tobacco field to work, he would have us looking for his knife because it was that special to him. The next year, Daddy was disking in that same field, and as he did a row around with the disc cart, he saw something glisten over in the field. And he thought it was just one of them pretty little rocks with all them little shiny flecks in it, so he just went right on. Well, the next row he came back, it was like the sun hit on whatever that was that's shiny and bounced a gleam right into his eye. It made him know he had to stop and see what that was. And when he walked over there, he picked it up. Sure enough, it was Pa Huff's old Boker knife. He cleaned it up as good as he could there in the field, but he just couldn't wait to give it to him. So at the dinner table, when Pa Huff was eating, Daddy held that knife in his hand. And Pa was, well, what is it? Daddy said, well, just hold your hand down. And Pa held his hand out, and Daddy dropped that knife in his hand. There was no words he could say. He bounced it in his hand, and he looked at Daddy, and he shook his head this way, and he looked at the knife, and he shook his head this way, and then he just put it in his pocket, and he kept on eating. My grandfather died in 1983, but just before he died, he and Daddy were sitting in the old glider on the front porch, and they were whittling. Pa Huff closed up the knife and he held it out in his hand. Daddy said, well, what? He said, well, hold your hand. And when Daddy held his hand out, he dropped that knife in it. He said, I think it should be yours now. After all, you were the one that found it. Daddy put that knife in his pocket and he carried it until just a few weeks ago. You see, Pa Huff had told Daddy when he gave it to him, he said, it's probably not worth anything. You probably couldn't get $5 out of it if you put it up for sale. But to Daddy, it was everything. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, I saw Daddy with his little knife collection out, and he was looking at all of them, and he was taking them out, and he's bouncing them in his hand, and he was rubbing on the handles. And I said, "What are you doing, Daddy?" He said, "I'm looking for a knife." He said, "The old knife that Pa Huff gave me, the handles are kind of loose, and the blades are loose." And he said, "I'm just afraid it's going to fall apart. I don't want to lose it." I said, "Well, Daddy, why don't you let me take it? I know a knife maker. Maybe he can fix it for you." So I took it back to Sandy Hook and called everybody I knew, and it happened that the knife maker told me that was just a little bit beyond him. He couldn't do it. I just about gave up hope and was ready to take the knife back when my husband came in and he reached me this little neon yellow card. And on it, it said, "Ball, knife." And it had a phone number. So I called Mr. Ball and I told him the story about the knife, how Pa Huff had carried it for years, and how Daddy had carried it for years, and now we just need it fixed. And he said, "Yeah, I think I can help you." So we took it over there. And when I reached it to Mr. Ball, he goes, oh my, just look at that. That's an old Boker. Best knife you could ever buy." He said, "Look at them handles. Why, they're paper thin." And he rubbed the handles with his thumb. He said, "Now, I can fix the knife, but those handles are so paper thin that they might crumble. I don't know if I can save them." And I said, "Well, whatever you can do. You know, Daddy, the knife is what's important to Daddy. If you can fix it, good." So Gene went and got it. He brought it back to me, and he said he couldn't put the handles back on, but he did send them back to me. So when I went up to Daddy's with the knife the next day, I couldn't wait to give it to him. He was eating supper. I walked into the table, and I had the knife in the hands, and I held it out. And he said, "Well, I'm eating supper. What is it?" I said, "Hold your hands out, Daddy." And when he did, I dropped that knife in it. And he held it, and he looked up at me. I said, "That's Pa Huff's knife." And he bounced it in his hand. And he rubbed the handles. I said, "Now, Daddy, he couldn't put those handles back on." I said, "But I've got them." And I set them on the table. The next day, Daddy came in, and he said, "Honey, if I whittle and make a mess in the floor, will you clean it up for me?" I said, "Daddy, if you make me some of them whirlicues that you always make that I can put in my dresser drawer, I'll clean up anything." And he did. He whittled with his knife. Then he laid the handles down on the coffee table. And he said, "Honey, I don't know what I'll ever do with these." He said, "If you want them, there they are, take them." I said, "Okay." And I brought them home with me. He said, "They ain't worth nothing." He said, "Even the knife, you probably couldn't get $5 out of it if you took it and put it up for sale." I brought these handles. And I've contacted a jeweler to make a necklace out of them. And even though I wouldn't be able to take it to market and sell it for $5, when that necklace hangs around my neck, I will have an eternal hug from my grandfather and my father, and the memories of an old Boker knife that you couldn't sell for $5 if you put it on the market. So some stories are just there. They happen. And the story of the knife is real. It's very true. And that knife is close to 100 years old. So these handles are so very special to me. And I'm sure that you have things in your house. If it's a doll that somebody special bought you, or maybe a gun, a BB gun, or a knife, or maybe a bicycle. Something that somebody bought you. Why did they buy you that? How did you feel when they gave it to you? How do you feel when you use it now? Telling a story is being able to move your audience from where they are to where you want them to go. You want them to feel what you feel, but you also don't want to leave them in a place where their feelings are upset. So the knife, to me, making the necklace and having it with me forever, and having a handle that I can pass on to each one of my boys from the old Boker knife. They can take the necklace apart, they don't want to wear it, but still, that's something that in the story, to me, is very, very real. So storytelling can be very, very real. It can take your emotions to very happy, to very emotional and very caring, to a very scary stage. Do you like haunted stories, scary stories? Yeah. You can go and you can become very, very scared. But that storyteller should release that fear before he stops telling the story. So what I did when I thought that this was something I might want to do after retirement was storytelling, there's a grant through the Kentucky Arts Council that is the Folk Life Apprenticeship Grant. So I applied for that grant, and I had worked a lot with Pam Holcomb because in every program I've ever done, I've incorporated storytelling or the arts in some form. And I had met Pam through work, and I called her. I said, if I apply for this grant, will you be my mentor? And she said, absolutely. So for a year, I worked under Pam. We went to the Cave Run Storytelling Festival. If you want to be a storyteller, watch other storytellers. Okay? Watch how they act. How do they use their face in expression? How do they use their hands? What did you feel when I held my hand out? Pa Huff, Daddy held his hand out. Pa Huff held his hand out. And then I held my hand out. It happened all through the life of the knife, the history of the knife, the same thing. And that was a connection through the whole story. That and the $5 knife. Couldn't get $5 out of it if you put it up for sale. But what is it worth with the emotions and the cultural and the family ties? So, your story is you, but watch other storytellers. And there's lots of different opportunities to watch storytellers. The Arts Council. You all may want to go back to your school and tell your teachers that the Arts Council has grants that will help a storyteller come into your school system and work with storytelling. And there's the Cave Run Storytelling Festival. Has anybody been to that? It is absolutely awesome. They bring the big names in from all across the country, and they have started incorporating some of Kentucky's storytellers in as well. So that's something you can do. Just watch television. Watch how people speak. Watch what they do with their body gestures and with their hand, their facial expression, their voice. How does their voice convey feeling? How can you convey feeling? I bet when you get mad, you let people know, don't you? I bet when you're happy, you let people know, don't you? And that's just like you do in storytelling. So in an essence, there is a little bit of acting, but it's totally different than reading a script. So I worked with Pam for a whole year, and our final project was Christy B's stories. Christy Barrett was diagnosed with cerebral palsy when she was 18 years old. They told her she wouldn't live past 21, but she's 40, in her early 40s now, and she's still going. But what she has had to do in order to get by in life has been nothing short of miraculous. And she has been so strong. Pam was Christy's school teacher, and she wanted me to help her write Christy's stories and present them in a 90-minute storytelling odyssey in front of all of her family and friends. That was my first storytelling event. It started out kind of rocky, but it did get really good toward the end. Now, Pam has some CDs out, and on one of her CDs, there is a story called 3 Steps. And she has given me permission to tell that story. And that's something that you've got to do. If you're going to tell someone else's stories, get permission. If there's a book a storybook that you want to tell the story of, get permission from that author. And usually they'll give it. You just got to ask. So this story that I want to tell is called 3 Steps. And it is about Christy Barrett. One day, Pam Holcomb was teaching math at 8 o'clock in the morning. Calculus, I believe it was. Now, calculus at 8 o'clock in the morning is bad enough without having to deal with anything else. You have to be focused. So, when Pam heard a rattle at the door, she thought it was the wind, and she went on teaching. Then she heard that rattle again, and she thought, well, is something wrong with my door? And she went on teaching, and then all of a sudden, here comes Christy B. She burst through that door, and her little arms in her wheelchair, and her arms were going every which way, and she was so excited, and she was, Mrs. H! Mrs. H! Mrs. H! Guess what I did? Oh, Pam. Pam didn't know what to do. She said, Christy, what's the matter with you? I'm teaching class. Oh, Mrs. H, you've got to let me tell you what I'm doing. You've got to listen. Last night, Mrs. H, last night I took 3 steps. I took 3 steps without anything helping me, without my wheelchair, without a walker. Mrs. H, I took 3 steps. Well, Pam congratulated Christy, and she said, I'm so proud of you. And Christy wheeled around on one wheel in her wheelchair, and she said, I got to go tell everybody else. I got to go tell everybody. I took 3 steps. And she went out and closed the door, and Pam said she had to get back to teaching, and for some reason she just couldn't stay focused. And she got the students to working on a problem off the board. And she went outside the door, she closed the door, and she was thinking, 3 steps. She's so excited over taking 3 steps. What's 3 steps to me? Well, I take 3 steps and I don't even think about it. And here, she's more excited than anything that's ever happened to her. She took 3 steps. Pam kind of lost her cool at that time, and she started thinking, maybe sometimes in a classroom, maybe it's not the students that need to be taught a lesson. Maybe, just maybe, the teacher needs to be taught something from time to time. And every time now that Pam sees Christy, she thanks her for that lesson. And that's why she wrote the story, 3 Steps, to honor Christy. And the only 3 steps she's ever got to take in her life without the aid of an income. Okay, there's a couple other things I'd like to talk about. The Kentucky Storytelling Association, Chuck has some cards and the front page of the website there. The Kentucky Storytelling Association is the association for storytellers. And you don't have to be a professional storyteller. You can be anyone to join the association. There's a lot of different things that the association does. And one of the things that is sponsored by the Kentucky Storytelling Association is the Youth Storytelling Contest. Anyone whose age, I think it had to go on the web, I think it's 7 through 18. If they're 18 before June 1st, they can enter. And we get entries. Last year we got 27 entries from all corners of Kentucky and in between. And then we get those and we take them in, and the top 5 winners, or the top 5 scorers, have the opportunity to go to the National Storytelling. It's not a competition on national level. It is a week-long workshop with the national names in storytelling that you go to. So that's something that you might want to go online and look at. The deadline is June 1st for entry. And we may be changing how it's entered. Last year you had to send a DVD to me, and then we'd get together